What is up, everyone? Brandon First, aka First Report, representing the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. It is time for the NFL Weekly, Week 11 to be exact. With me, as always, my co-host, Raider Jim Martinez. You can find Raider Jim at Raider Jim 1090. How you doing tonight, sir?
Hey, I'm doing good. I was going to complain about the weather outside because it's not bright and sunny and it just hit under 70 degrees, so I think it's cold. But what can I say? I was born and raised here, so I can say that it's cold at 69 degrees.
Exactly. It's we pay a lot of money for this beautiful weather, and when it's not up to our level, you'll hear about it. That's for sure. But yeah, it's definitely a little colder. Personally a little bit under the weather here, but it's going to take a lot to keep me away talking football with Raider Jim. Coach Lupian hopefully will be back with us next week. Trust me, he was not scared off by the lawyer Raider Jim on the other side. He is ready. He was just unable to join us tonight. But well, actually, I can guarantee you he won't be with us next week because we won't be with y'all next week. We record on Thursdays, and next week is Thanksgiving. So it'll be a time for us to be with our families. Likewise for y'all. It'll be, plus we're probably missing half the games anyway. I feel like these days there are so many games on Thanksgiving anyway. It's almost half the week as is. But with that, it's a nice little segue into instead of looking back on the week that was, something to be thankful for, to kind of stay on par here with the Thanksgiving theme that we have coming up next week. So I'll leave it for you, Raider Jim. Something you're thankful for, whether it is your team or opening it up to the NFL in general or football related. But what's the one thing you're thankful for this holiday season?
Well, I'd like to give a big thanks to Mark Davis and Derek Carr for not stringing me along for 14 or 15 weeks and making me think that we were really going to go to the playoffs. So at least now I know we're not going to finish at 500. We're not going to go to the playoffs, and we will be the laughing stock of the 2022-23 season. Derek, Mark, thanks.
Wow. My goodness, Raider Jim, you never cease to amaze me. Because obviously I was under the impression Coach was going to be with us tonight as well. So I did kind of, want to take a couple pot shots as this week. I became a little vulnerable. I'm not going to lie. Obviously, we're not breaking any news. The Eagles are no longer undefeated. Wasn't an ideal performance on Monday night, and definitely heard about it from my colleagues. But yeah, I wanted to throw that in there and see what I could get out of you. But Raider Jim, he's right there. He's the first one on the line to fall on the grenade and say, no, you know what? No one's going to talk more smack about the Raiders than me. And I respect that. That's getting out in front of it. He's done that. That's a fantastic. And you know what? That's something to be thankful for, because I call it NFL purgatory, right? But you do want to either be really good or really bad. And for better or worse, the Raiders are really bad, and there's some players in this draft, depending on how they want to go about it, that maybe they could target. Although Raider Jim, first round picks for the Raiders, that's a whole nother story.
Yeah,
But we're
who
keeping
knows?
things.
There may be another Jonathan Abrams or another Jamarcus Russell just waiting for the Raiders.
Oh boy, yeah, that's that. We'll save that for another day. We're gonna keep it light here. Myself personally, I'm thankful. Look, I'd love to sit here and say I'm thankful for a team, my team being 9-0. That's not the case, and that's okay. But you know what I am thankful for? I'm thankful for games that we saw this past Sunday, like the Buffalo Bills and the Minnesota Vikings. Two teams that, I hope they don't meet in the Super Bowl, but we very well could see a rematch down the line in the Super Bowl. What an unbelievable game that was. Tons of miscues, maybe the greatest catch for the moment or the situation that I've ever seen personally. One of those literal yell out louds with no one around. Just couldn't believe my eyes. But I'm thankful for games like that. It really reminds you that, hey, you're going to have to work through a few, 16-14 Thursday night games to get some of those fantastic ones that we saw this past weekend. But with that being said, it is time to dive into the week 11 action. And you know what is the birds were chirping, and yes, the pun was intended, with Raider Jim and Coach Lupian on Monday night when the game started, making jokes about, oh, there's a game tonight, like the least anticipated Monday night football game ever. And they, of course, morphed into, oh my, what's going on? Blah, blah, blah. And yes, it got pretty ugly. So you know what? I said, I've been a nice guy. I put the Raiders and the AFC West in front. I put the Saints right behind them in the NFC South, and I pushed the beasts of the East to the back for the sake of my colleagues. Not this week. We are starting in the NFC East because new rule. The best team, or the team with the best record, starts the show off. So here we go. It is going to be an interesting one. Hopefully, it'll be a nice, easy Sunday morning for myself, but it is going to be the Philadelphia Eagles heading to the Indianapolis Colts. The Eagles minus 300, Colts plus 245. The line sits with the Eagles 6.5-point favorites. The over-under is 43.5. Obviously, I'll get this one started. 8-1. Doesn't sound nearly as nice and sexy as 9-0. And obviously, coming off of a loss to the Commanders in a game that I think a lot of people, like myself included, expected the Eagles to win. I'm not going to make excuses, even though there were 3 pretty blatant missed calls, at least in my mind. The late hit out of bounds, the face mask on Goddard. I just don't understand how you see the fumble, but you don't see the face mask when you're literally looking at the same exact thing. And then the last play of the game, or at least the last play I saw, Brandon Graham's late hits on Taylor Heineke when he gave himself up. Very difficult for me to expect a 300-pound man to just completely alter his course because another individual went to his knees. But once again, I'm not making excuses. The Eagles lost. The Commanders played a hell of a game. And congrats for Taylor Heineke for feeling that he was that important to the win when he couldn't even get me 6 points to win my fantasy game. He ended up with 4.8 points in fantasy. So yeah, congratulations to Taylor Heineke. Once again, I'm not bitter at all. But looking ahead to this game, this is another, I don't want to call it trap game, but a game that the Eagles are going to have to be ready for. Another good defense, maybe not to the same level as Washington, and definitely not the familiarity. But I do expect the Colts defense to kind of try and mess with Jalen Hurts' timing, try and force the Eagles into a lot of 3rd and longs. That's something they struggled with this past week. I do expect the Eagles to win this game. 6.5, like I said, after what I saw this past weekend, I'm not fully in on the Eagles covering a whole lot of games down the stretch, especially on the road. Once again, I do expect the Eagles to win this game. I'll take the Colts, who, for better or worse, really surprised some people last week with Jeff Saturday. I do think they'll keep it close, but the Eagles win this game probably by a field goal, maybe even by 4 or 5 points, but not by that 7 that's needed. In terms of the over-under here, definitely got to be some questions about that defense for the Eagles. They were exposed in certain situations, long sustaining drives. That's what the Colts want to do as well. Maybe will do it better than the Commanders. Matt Ryan's back in the fold, and I think he's as rejuvenated as he can be. I will take the over here. Definitely a bit of a worry here for me this week. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Philadelphia road favorites against the Colts.
Yeah, I think you said it. I think Philadelphia wins this one. But one of the concerns for me, if I was the Eagles fan, it would be Jordan Davis, Marlon, Tui Pelotu on the injured reserve list, and those are guys, big bodies up front. And the Colts have a pretty decent running game. Jonathan Taylor, there's an asterisk on this. I get it. He ran for 144 yards last week. Well, they played the Raiders. So pretty much a lot of people can say we did really good on the running game against the Raiders. But when you are missing a couple big bodies up front, like the Eagles are, and the Eagles have given up a lot of running yards, then that would be a little concern, because if it turns into this ground and pound and you start wearing down the Eagle defense, that could be a little bit of a challenge. It could make it a little bit tighter. Like you, I believe that that Indianapolis covers on this one. They're at 6.5, I believe. It's minus 6.5. So I'll take one more point. I'll take, or half a point. I go Indianapolis +7, and I do like under 44 because I think weather is might be a little bit of an issue here. You know, the field just might be a little bit surface damp from clouds and things like that. You know, just the time of year. But going to be a good game. But I think the Eagles definitely get back on track. They're still the team to beat as far as I can see.
Yeah, definitely. You kind of hit the nail on the head. I think the first time all season the Eagles have had to dealt with something probably every team has had to dealt with this year, and that's injuries. Obviously now Dallas Goedert going down. But Howie Roseman, he goes out a couple, you know, you talk about Jordan Davis going down. Eagles go out and sign Linval Joseph, and then just a few hours before we went live, Ndamukong Suh returning to the league. He will be playing for the Eagles. So I think they're really showing that dedication to a deep defensive line. Like I said, I don't expect to see Ndamukong Suh challenge for a defensive player of the year, but that's a nice little weapon, I will say, right there to kind of come off the bench, if you will. But excuse me. Moving on to the other side of the NFC East, we have the Dallas Cowboys at the Minnesota Vikings. A very interesting line we see here again. It is the Dallas Cowboys minus 125, once again, at Minnesota, where the Vikings are essentially even money, plus 105. The line sits Dallas 1.5 favorites, 47.5 is the over-under. This is an interesting one to me. I expected the Packers to cover last week over the Cowboys. I didn't expect them to win. I expected to kind of look like they were getting on track. And the Cowboys kind of got back to what the Cowboys do, and that's kind of struggle against teams that they should dominate. Once again, I talk about playing down to their competition. We saw that last week. Well, Minnesota, on the other hand, scored arguably the most impressive win of the year thus far. And this is their reward, a home game in which Vegas thinks the Cowboys are 1.5 point favorites. That's fine with me. I enjoy it. Please, Vegas, keep doing stuff like this. But I would take the Vikings money line. There isn't anything I've seen this year that would push me off of the Vikings in this one. I will say that Dallas defense does look good, but I think if you do get the right situation in there, and I mean, Kirk Cousins, he's got some chemistry with Justin Jefferson, that is for sure. But I will take Minnesota money line. In terms of the over-under here, just going by what we've seen from both of these teams, I do think we are going to see some points being scored. So I will take, I could see a 28-20 type game, 31-24. That will get us the over. So I'll take over and Minnesota money line. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's only going to take one more win. And if they keep getting the press that they're getting, Minnesota might as well take that Viking figurehead that they put in the middle of the field and replace it with Rodney Dangerfield, because they are the most disrespected team in the NFL. I don't get it. You talk about guys that don't get no respect. I mean, they've rolled off 7 in a row. Maybe they're not pretty. Maybe they win ugly. But man, they persevere and they played. I didn't even finish watching that game last week because when I turned it on in the first half, I was like, well, I guess I was way off on this one, and I just let it go. Dallas, on the other hand, you said it. We've got Cousins and Jefferson are out there. That's a dangerous combination on the passing game, and the Cowboys secondary is a little bit beat up. If those guys are beat up and you can't get the line to press Cousins, forget it. It's game over. Just like that. It's going to be that easy. Do I think it's a runaway? No. At home, though, and to be the underdog, no, I'm with you. I take Minnesota and the money line all day long, over 47.5, no problem. I think it's going to go back and forth, and it could come down to that one thing that has haunted Dallas throughout the last couple seasons. Can Prescott hang on to the ball? Mm-hmm. Can he not give up the ball? I'm actually thinking of putting together a business proposition and sending it to him. off season, I'll manage it for him. A bakery, we can call it Dax turnovers. I think that's a great idea. The marketing is right there for the taking.
Wow, I think you're gonna have to put a lot of figures down there on that one. But hey, that's maybe post career. I don't know if he wants to dive into that business venture during his career, but post career definitely. But I agree with you. I can't imagine there are a whole lot of like I said, I think this is just bias. I can't even call it recency bias because recency bias would see the other way, and then doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But moving on, we got the Los Angeles Rams plus 155. They are heading across country to New Orleans to take on the New Orleans Saints at minus 185. The Saints are 3.5-point favorites at home. The over-under sits at a very low 38.5. Now, obviously, Raider Jim called for the suspension of the Saints on last week's podcast. Me being the good, thoughtful judge, I have to wait to hear the counter argument from the other side. So as of right now, the appeal is being on hold. So as kind of appeals go here in the sporting side, the Saints will continue to be on the podcast till we get some figure this all out.
I'm here to represent my position. I don't see the other party. Doesn't even show up to represent.
It's kind of like we're giving them a bit of a leeway. We'll see him in a few weeks. If we don't see him in a few weeks, then we may have to make a decision there. But for the time being, since Coach is being such a good guy, helping out a friend move right now, we will allow him, or the Saints, I should say, to remain at least for one more week. But Raider Jim, it's only fitting we pass it over to you. Rams 3.5-point underdogs as they go to New Orleans. The over-under is 38.5.
What is up with the LA Rams? I mean, I get it. The Raider Nation had expectations for the LA Raiders. Everybody had expectations on how strong and what a battle it was going to be in the AFC West. And in the NFC West, I think everybody thought the Rams were just going to come out and defend that title that they got. Boy, this is a real head-scratching disappointment if you're a Rams fan. Stafford supposed to be back, which is a good thing for them, except now his number one favorite target is out and won't be around for a few weeks probably. So Cooper's out, Stafford's back. The only thing that I see that the Rams have in their favor, sort of, is, and it's not the running game of the Saints, it's not the quarterback situation for the Saints, not the defense, but their offensive line. Their offensive line is dinged up. Josh Andrews, the center, he's been, and this is interesting, I wanted to touch on this. Two guys on the offensive line haven't practiced because of illness. And this isn't the only team. Maybe I'm too focused on all this COVID nonsense that we just went through, but the number of players did not practice this week because of illness. You know how you're feeling tonight, and you made the comment, I haven't had the flu, I don't think, in a few years. You just wonder if there's viruses just running rampant now through the NFL locker rooms, and is that going to be, you're going to see more of that. So they've got two guys that would maybe not even be 100% because a tackle, the center. They got another tackle, James Ferst. He's on concussion protocol. Andres Pete, he's the best shape of all of them, but he's got a tricep issue. So, but that doesn't mean he can't pass block and things like that. But if the Rams were playing, if Aaron Donald was playing like he had in the last couple of years, you'd say, oh man, it's going to be a field day for that Rams front. I don't think that's the case this week. Yeah. So I will go ahead. I'm going to stick with New Orleans on this one. I do like the 3.5. I think they can do it because I just don't think the Rams are going to put points on the board. And I'll take under 38.5 as well.
Yeah, the John Wolford, thanks for coming. Thanks for filling in for a few days or a few hours, but they got to figure something else out there. Peter King, you would always say, the two most important positions in football are quarterback and backup quarterback. And I think last week we saw the difference. The Cardinals had the better backup quarterback. Colt McCoy was able to manage the game better, and John Wolford was not. Obviously, they'll feel more comfortable with Matthew Stafford back, but you brought it up. That Cooper Kupp injury is very difficult, and you also have to wonder, is there so he's out 4 to 6 weeks. We fast forward 4 to 6 weeks ahead. What's the number the Rams have to win to get him back? Because let's be honest, if they lose 4 or 5 in a row,
amen,
shut him down. I mean, at some point, what else is wrong? What else can we get fixed in the next 5 months? And because this isn't a bad football team, I just think I've said it from the beginning. They just go through these peaks and valleys. Sean McVay's team, they get figured out. He figures them out. They gets figured out. He'll adjust again. But I don't think this year it will get adjusted. A tough place to figure it out, being New Orleans, especially in, I mean, that division is as wide open as it gets. Every single team in that division has a chance to win that division, and they have good reason to feel like they have that, no matter what anybody else says. So I like New Orleans as well. I may just buy the half a point just to make sure I don't get, taken down by a Will Lutz field goal that, 20-17, and then, I lose it because I didn't buy that half a point. But I do also like the under here. I think we have two defensive minded teams, and two teams that are going to try to manage the game rather than win it, or at least offensively, quarterback wise, they're going to, which is crazy to think about for Stafford. But I just think with the way it's going, like I said, the loss of Odell Beckham has really shown through for this team. But yeah, I do like New Orleans and the under as well. So I think we're in agreement there. Moving on to the AFC West. It is time to talk about the Las Vegas Raiders, who are plus 125 as they head to Denver to take on the Broncos, who are minus 150. The Broncos 2.5 point favorites, and the over-under sits at 41.5. Raider Jim, for better or worse, the floor is yours.
I remember last week, I believe it was last week against the Colts, and the Raiders were at home. But for as bad as their play has been, and because they brought in Saturday to coach the Colts, the odds makers made the Raiders the 5.5 point favorites at home. And I told a buddy of mine, take the 5 points all day long and put it on the Colts, because the Raiders are not going to win this game. And I was right on that count. On this one, to only be 2.5 point underdogs amazes me. The weather's going to be cold, but it's not going to be snowing in Denver. The Raiders have just fallen apart. It's not even the wheels have come off the wagon. They just don't know what they're doing. Abrams, they cut him, first round draft pick, from a few years back. They cut him. And by the time he gets his locker room cleaned out, Blake Martinez says, screw this. I'm done. I didn't come back for this. And then I'm hearing just yesterday, or it might have been this morning even, Devontae Adams questionable because he's got an abdominal injury. I mean, so now Renfro's out, Waller's out, Adams is questionable, probably wouldn't be 100%. Carr has just got a stress disorder. He just does. He's off. No more excuses. My heart goes out to him for the great emotional, press conference after the game and these big pauses. But they are not going to beat Denver Broncos, and Denver's not that good of a team. Russell Wilson and the offense, that's not looking like it was a good experiment, because he's not the offensive dynamo that he was, or at least with what's around him and the game plan they have. But they've got enough to beat the Raiders. Take the minus 2.5. They'll cover the spread, no problem. I don't know about the 41.5 because the Raiders, they score 17 in the first half and then they score 3 points the rest of the game. I don't think it's going to be a high scoring game. I can see this one being under 42. I might take an extra half point on that. The other thing on the defensive side of the ball, they won't pressure Wilson. And the defensive line has 10 sacks for the Raiders. 7 of those, Max Crosby. Only 3 sacks for the rest of those guys. So you don't win when that's the way the contributions are distributed amongst your team.
Yeah, I saw one of the more, and I've seen a lot of crazy stats this year. And a lot of them, unfortunately, based around the Broncos. But the Broncos, if they've scored 18 points in every single game, 18 points, they would be 8-1. That's how good their defense has been and how bad their offense has been.
Yeah.
And that's really, really tough to really kind of fathom for a Russell Wilson led offense. But on the other side, you hit the nail on the head. The Raiders are in turmoil. I feel like it's no longer if, it's a matter of when Josh McDaniels gets fired. I think I know it's only 1 year and you'd like to at least give him one, but I don't think you got time to waste. If you're Mark Davis, you want to hold on to the attention of the Vegas fan base as much as possible. And that stadium's awesome. But at the same time, you need to start winning very, very quickly. And it's not happening right now. So it's a matter of when he is let go, if it's at the end of the year or not. But the bigger question then comes, what happens in the offseason? Do they figure out what they need to do finally for the draft? Because that's going to be the biggest part for them. But for this game, it's an AFC West rivalry. I'm going to take the Broncos. If you want to feel a little more comfortable and just taking the money line, it's not a terrible money line at -150. I would probably feel comfortable about this money line closer to -200.
Yeah.
I feel like the Broncos and the fan base, this is kind of the Broncos haven't had a whole lot to cheer for. They know their team offensively struggles, but they know this is a winnable game against a big time heated rival. I expect the crowd to show up as well. I will take the under 41.5. I think this is more of a grinded out type game. And I do think we're going to see some turnovers. Both of these defenses can turn those, or at least probably one of the defenses can. Maybe the Raiders can also get lucky with tip ball or something with some turnovers there. But it's going to be an interesting one out at Mile High. But moving on,
I will also say that
yes,
that if there are the right miscues or too many miscues on the offensive side of the ball first half, don't be surprised if Derek Carr is not under center in the second half of this game.
that might be the more pertinent win. And if we're being honest, who is the backup there?
I can't even remember.
There you go. Yeah. So yeah, that's not a good sign, folks. But no, I think that's probably the only reason we haven't seen it yet, is because whoever's behind Carr is not the future, because we've seen teams like Indianapolis. We've seen teams like Carolina, who at the very least, they drafted Malik Willis, or excuse me. I was thinking Tennessee. They drafted Malik Willis and they drafted Sam Ellinger. There's a chance, hey, let's see what he's got. The Raiders, unfortunately, don't really have that quote unquote prospect waiting. So we'll see.
And they're going with this mindset of, but they how many games have they lost by just one score? Okay, enough. Mm-hmm. Just enough of that. And Mark Davis to stand in front of the press and say, nope, he's our coach for a long time to come. Dude, you need to reel that in. That's not what the fan base wants to hear.
Yeah. And that's not what they deserve either. Let's be honest. This is no longer the 1980s NFL where you get 5 years to implement your tactics.
It's not his daddy's
2 years max. And that might even be pushing it. And you cannot start the way this guy has started with his history as well. So moving on to the other AFC West matchup we'll be talking about, we have the Kansas City Chiefs -255 They head to Los Angeles to take on the Chargers, who are plus 210 on the money line side of things. The spread sits with Kansas City 5.5-point favorites, and the over under is 50.5. Raider Jim, AFC West is your jurisdiction. What are your thoughts?
Could be a fun game to watch. I think I'm more interested to see how much red there will be in the stadium, because that fan base is going to come out. Sun's going to be out. That team travels as well as any other fan base. Plus, they already have a big concentration here in California. Kansas City is just, again, they are the cream of the AFC West. They are the cream of the crop. So I don't see anything surprising here. There's nothing on either side of the ball that tells me, oh, we got to watch for this, we got to watch for that. Herbert's got his targets back, and that's all fine and well. But you still have a guy named Mahomes and a guy named Kelsey on the other side. And I think this is going to be a fun game, but Kansas City covers on this one. Definitely, I think they win by a whole touchdown, 6 points, if not 7. But I like the over in this one too. Maybe I'll drop it back a half point and go to 50, but definitely I think it's going to be Kansas City covers the spread and over 50 on this one.
I agree. I think the over is, one of those quote unquote slam dunks. I think every time these teams come together, we just see offensive fireworks. And I don't see anything changing here. The only concern I have, and it's with the Chargers side of things, they play, we have teams that, with Dallas and others that play down to their competition. The Chargers, even with all their injuries and things like that, they've seemed to play up to certain competition. Now, obviously this past week, they didn't get the job done against the Niners, but they were in the driver's seat for most of that game, even though I think a lot of us still expected the Niners to win that game, but the Chargers went out and continue to kind of live up to that. However, 5.5, I'll probably stay away from the spread here. Just enjoy the over under. Like I said, I really like the over here. I think Kansas City wins this game. I worry about a late kind of Charger-esque fourth quarter run where they score with a minute left. They get really excited. They get a chance for an onside kick. Nothing comes of it. But at the end of the day, it's 28-24. And it was 28-17 with 2 minutes left, and everybody, was pretty much ready to leave. But that last, quote unquote, last second touchdown in garbage time covers that spread. I could very well see that happening. I really do like the over here. I guess if I'd have to make a pick, I'd say the Chargers plus 5.5, but not very confident there. But you brought up a great point. You see minus 5.5 for a home underdog. Not so much here. I think it's going to probably be a home game for Kansas City. Kansas City always travels well, and definitely on the West Coast, they're very, very prevalent here. So moving on to the Chicago Bears plus 140. They will head to Atlanta. The Falcons are minus 165 on the money line side of things. The Falcons are 3-point favorites at home. The over-under sits at 49.5. I'll get this one started. We're starting to see, I think, the Bears kind of learning how to use Justin Fields. It's kind of like when you get a new power tool or a new remote control car. The first few days are a little bumpy, and it takes a little time to figure out all the kind of nuances, things like that. Well, the Bears have figured that out. Or at the very least, they've let Justin Fields figure it out. This guy is a absolute beast running the football, but at the same time, he's smart at times. Now, there are still some things that I know the Bears want to clean up, but I think compared to where he was last year, they're looking at it and feeling pretty good about that. Now, with that being said, I still don't think he's on that level to get them over the hump to win games like this. I do think that in a few years, maybe a few more weapons, maybe some other defensive tools will get the job done. But we've seen it with the Bears. I mean, they're having to win games scoring 38, 40 points a game. That's great. But as good as Justin Fields has been, he's not going to do that every single week. This is a game I do think we are going to stay under 49.5. I know both of these offenses have kind of put some points together over the last few weeks, but I think they kind of come back down to earth, especially Justin Fields. I think we see a more concerted effort to have a spy, maybe two spies for this guy. I just don't think too many defensive coordinators are going to want to continue to fall victim to this guy running for 50 yards, for touchdowns, things like that. I will take Atlanta -3, maybe bet down to get to 2.5. I just think the Bears have had a good few weeks, but the league will kind of catch up to them. And like I said, the defensive coordinators are going to find ways to make Justin Fields beat them throwing the football. And I think this is a week that we do get back to that. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? The Bears heading to Atlanta as underdogs.
You got to appreciate a team whose leading rusher is the quarterback.
Yeah, unbelievable.
What can you say about that? I mean, it really is. Atlanta has issues getting in the end zone. They have issues scoring. They played Carolina last week. They scored 15 points. That's not a real statement of offensive juggernaut. On the other hand, the Bears have screwed me over on the over-under a few games over the last few weeks because I think 4 of their last 5 games or something like that, they've hit 30 plus. So they can get the points on the board. Oh, we there?
Sorry.
We good?
Yeah, we're good. We're good. Just had a issue here.
Sorry about that. So I think what's going to happen this week is the Bears running game, even though they're going against a pretty good defense on the Atlanta side, running defense, I think the offensive line is really going to help out Fields. I think he's going to have another successful game. They have they've gone over 225 yards rushing, I think, the last 3 or 4 games. And I can see them going there again, controlling the ball. I don't see this as over 49 at all, only because I don't see Atlanta scoring much more than they did last week. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead. I will take Chicago plus 3.5 in this one and under 49.5.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one there in Atlanta. 2 teams that are, maybe feel like they can do something. Obviously, Atlanta in a wide open NFC South. Another team in the NFC South feeling good about themselves, the Carolina Panthers. They're going to be plus 520 as they head to Baltimore to face the Ravens, who are minus 720 on the money line side of things. The Ravens are 13-point favorites. The only double-digit spread we'll be talking about this weekend, but the over-under does sit at 41.5. Raider Jim, I'll let you get this one started. Carolina, heavy underdogs as they head to Baltimore.
Yeah, a few years ago, everybody would have been, or not everybody, but I think some fans would have been excited to see Baker Mayfield and Lamar Jackson going out in the middle of the field and seeing, who's going to make something exciting happen. PJ Walker's out for Carolina. It is going to be Baker Mayfield is what I hear. First start since the early part of this season, that's for sure. And I don't know if that's going to bode well for Carolina or not, because again, as we have said over the podcast the last 3-4 weeks, Lamar Jackson is just coming out, playing ball, making things happen, getting his team in the end zone, and finding ways to win games. And also, the Justin Houston, the linebacker for the Ravens, is playing like a monster. And he is going to, I think, wreak havoc. I think they're going to use him in a lot of schemes where they send him on the edge, they send him in the middle. I think he's just going to be a constant nuisance in the backfield of the Panthers. I like Baltimore in this one. 13, though, that's a lot. Like you said in one of the previous games, I may even just stay away from the spread on this one. But if you put a gun to my head, I'd say Carolina, take one more point, get Carolina plus 14. And then I do think it will be over 41 in this one because I think the teams are going to score. I just think Baltimore's going to outscore them.
Yeah, I'm definitely with the over on that. I mean, Baltimore, they might hit 42 themselves. Let's be honest. This could get ugly.
Yes.
Lamar Jackson's been playing out of his mind. But I agree with you. 13 points is a lot. And I also believe if anyone's going to come out and really kind of want to show show out for the haters, if you will. It's going to be Baker Mayfield. This may be his last chance in Carolina. I don't know the extent of PJ Walker's injury, but they're ready to move on, it looks like, from Baker Mayfield. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that goes. But I do expect to see Baker to at the very least attempt to put his best foot forward. And he has a penchant to, he can make some plays here and there. So I do like the over here. Like it's same thing here. Hold a gun to my head. I guess I'll take Carolina just because I feel like there's bigger room for, error in that situation. Obviously 13 points. Baltimore's got to play a really, really good game to cover 13.5 points, because the way the NFL works these days is, if you want 13 points to be the cover, it's got to be a 27-point lead at halftime, something like that, because John Harbaugh is not going to trot Lamar Jackson out there any longer than he has to going forward. So it's a bit tight here on this one. I'll take Carolina, like I said, plus 13, not feel very comfortable with it, but I am very comfortable with over 41.5. But moving on to a game that we were thinking was going to be the snowball of all snowballs from what we were told. It is the the Cleveland Browns at the Buffalo Bills, but that has been changed. It is now the Cleveland Browns versus the Buffalo Bills. This game will be in Detroit, a neutral field. Buffalo is 8.5-point favorites. The over-under is 48.5. This is the new over-under with the movement. It was 41.5 when it was in Buffalo, where they're expected to get between 4 to 6 feet of snow in a 24-hour period between Saturday and Sunday. They don't know when, but they know it's in a 24-hour period, a human equivalent of snow will be dumped in the greater Buffalo area. So that has been moved to Detroit. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts on Cleveland at Buffalo in Detroit?
Yeah, the only good thing for both of these teams, and especially for Cleveland, is now that they're going to play inside, at least it kind of, minimizes the opportunity for silly injuries. And for the fans, you should see some points scored. It's not going to be this, trudge through the mud type of a thing. It's going to be a good game. Unfortunately, I think what's going to overshadow all this up to the game, during the game, right before kickoff, maybe at halftime, we're all going to have to hear over and over and over again about Deshaun Watson, because he's finally practicing. He's finally back on the squad. They're going to talk about how Jacoby Brissett's not the guy, and it's just a matter of time, blah, 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 which is too bad for Jacoby Brissett. He's just gone out and tried to do his job with the scheme that was built for another guy and with the personnel they put around him. I think at 8.5, I would, if it was 7.5 at Buffalo with bad weather, I'd say Cleveland might be able to make it a game. I don't see them making it a game. Buffalo's going to come out. Josh Allen is going to be he's going to be a little better than he was last week. Although the Bills have shown they're human. They showed they're human against the Jets. They showed they're human against the Vikings. Unfortunately, they don't have to be superhuman when it comes to playing against the Browns. So I see this one definitely going. I would take Buffalo. I like the 7.5-point number, but they bumped it up, you said, to 8.5.
Yeah.
I would pull that down to 8. And then the new over-under is, you said?
48.5.
I'll go under on that because I don't see Cleveland scoring a lot of points.
Yeah, I think Cleveland is going to hit this over. And I think it will have to come down to Cleveland. It's going to be a lot of Chubb. It's really kind of the way it's gone, but you really actually brought a lot to the forefront. I totally forgot. The Deshaun Watson saga is going to really get rolling, and we're going to hear all about it. And, the NFL is going to do their very best to talk about how the investigation that they went forward was nothing short of the JFK assassination. And they brought in experts from every single walk of this planet, and they've done every single thing they can to figure out that, 13 or 11 games or whatever the damn number is was enough. And they're just going to drive it down our throats for the next 4 or 5 weeks. And all the while hoping and praying that this Cleveland Browns team does not make the playoffs, and they have to talk about it one more week, and then they will do their very best to make us forget all about it in the offseason. And next year Deshaun Watson will be the comeback player of the year type situation. And I hate to say it, but that's just so on par for the NFL. But in terms of this game, Buffalo is that team that, that bully that got beaten up last week. The nerd got him, or this or that, well, he's looking around and he finds a little Cleveland Brown over there. And I think he's going to beat the, what out of that little kid. And I expect the Bills to win this game. 8.5. I can see it happening. I do think with the game being moved inside or indoors, it will help with the points being scored, thus help the Bills put some points up to cover the 8.5. I could see Buffalo winning by 2 touchdowns, 10 points, and that'll get the job done. But once again, I agree with you. I do like the under here. I see this, a 28-17 game, and that will not get the job done there. So moving on to the second to last game, a team that will be obviously renting their house out this weekend. The Detroit Lions will head to East Rutherford, New Jersey to take on the New York Giants. The Lions are plus 130 and the Giants are minus 155 on the money line side of things. The Giants sit as 3-point favorites currently, and the over under is 44.5. This is an NFC East matchup, so I will start this one off. Obviously, the Lions last week put some things together. They are, I don't know if the darlings of the NFL is the right word to put it. I know Dan Campbell doesn't want it to be like that, but they're a team that it's hard to root against. Going up against a team that, if it wasn't in New York, I think this would be a team that's hard to root against. There aren't too many people who are not living in New York who could see something like this as an underdog story. Whenever there's New York in front of any team, I don't think underdog regardless. But that's kind of how the Giants have been. They're continuing to fight and battle in a very tough NFC East. I think I would feel a lot more comfortable buying a 0.5 point, taking the Giants minus 2.5, just in case that field goal gets us. In terms of the over-under, I will take the under here. I think we're going to see more of a cagey matchup. Both of these teams, the Lions, for better or worse, kind of look around and say, hey, we might be able to do something. We might be able to make a run, win another game. And then for the Giants, they're kind of walking around like a kid in elementary school with the egg, right? Just holding it and making sure that they don't do anything to drop this fantastic season they're doing. I think they play a little more conservatively. So I do like the under, but I do like the Giants to cover, but I'd feel a lot better if I could buy that 0.5 point and cover minus 2.5. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Giants hosting the Lions.
I certainly like that strategy, taking that 0.5 point and making it down to minus 2.5 and keeping it with keeping it with the Giants. Now, Amon-Ra St. Brown, wow, this kid can play. And he's going to be one of the premier receivers in the league for a long time if he stays healthy. Jared Goff has a great target. Absolutely, these guys can put up some points. However, I think Adoree Jackson is going to have he's going to cause some problems for this kid coming off the line. The other thing is, on the other side of the ball, unfortunately, the Lion defense can't stop anybody. And with that, they're tasked with stopping Saquon Barkley, who's having himself a great season right now. I was reading a stat that said the only game that the Lions have not allowed at least 100 yards of rushing was when they played the Washington team. Other than that, everybody rolls up 100. And Barkley is just, it's almost like he comes out of the locker room with 50 on the stat sheet, and then he just takes it from there. And then you have to remember, Daniel Jones is no slouch when he wants to run too. So either way, when they run the ball or put the ball in the air, This one is just favored or in the favor of the Giants all the way. So again, even though I'll still take that half point, I think the Giants win this one handily. If they win by 6, I won't be surprised. Detroit, they just got their work cut out for them in one of the better teams in the NFC East this year.
Yeah, and also that's a great omen for me being a USC fan. You just calling out 2 USC Trojans in your little
There you
game
are.
preview in the NFL. There we go. Hopefully, SC can take care of the UCLA business they got to take care of this weekend. But yeah, I'm on St. Brown and Adoree Jackson, 2 USC standouts who will be going head to head this Sunday in New Jersey. The final game we'll be talking about this weekend is an AFC East matchup we talked about, I feel like just 2 or 3 weeks ago, but it is the New York Giants plus 140 at the New England Patriots minus 170. The Patriots are 3.5 point favorites. The over under is 38.5. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Patriots hosting the Jets.
I'm going to stick with what I think going back. I'd have to look back at that podcast just to make sure, but it seems to me I like the Jets the first time around. I like the Jets this time around, especially when it's a 3.5 point spread. Give me another half point, Jets plus 4. I think it's going to stay under. I'm not sure how well the weather's going to be. Of course, I can't find my notes now that I made on the game, but I just see them. They have been getting closer and closer. Well, they played the Bills, and they played the Bills very well, obviously. And that was a game that they were not supposed to have too big of a chance in. So when you are starting to put it together, you're executing mentally, then it's with you, and you can go out and that you're as competitive as you thought you were early on in the season. And I think that's going to hold with them now. Here, let me see if I got any injuries that were down. No, nothing at all. I'm not seeing anything.
No.
It's funny, though. They call the matchup to watch Bill Belichick against Zach Wilson. Really?
Of course. Of course.
Yeah. So, no. So I do. I still say the Jets are going to take this one.
Yeah. I don't know if it's just the hill that the Jets can't get over, but I still feel the Patriots have the advantage in this one. I don't know what it is, but if it's just stuck with me over what happened the last few weeks, just because I was so high on the Jets thinking they were going to take care of business against the Patriots. They kind of laid an egg, for being honest. We'll see what happens here, though. I think Zach Wilson is a quarterback that he's got a lot of growing to do, and I think we will see that Belichick defense, not necessarily Bill, more Steve Belichick, who's a defensive coordinator there. See what he can add up, and mainly how the Jets adjust. I mean, they just got their butts kicked by this team 2-3 weeks ago. What do you do differently now? That's going to be a big test for Saleh and his staff. With that being said, I will take the Patriots. I'll buy that half point just to get to -3. But I do like the over under here. I think 2 defensive minded teams, 2 teams that don't necessarily want to open things up. Give me the under there. But with that, Raider Jim, final thoughts as we head into week 11 and Thanksgiving week.
Who'd have thought we'd be sitting here and it's almost Thanksgiving?
Unbelievable.
Seems like we were just talking about the end of preseason and things like that, and baseball hadn't started playoffs, and here we are. So it doesn't sound like we'll be here next week. So again, just safe holidays for everybody, and we'll start with Thanksgiving weekend. Everybody be safe, be smart, no drinking and driving, folks. There's too many other people that need to exercise the same thing, the same thoughts all the way along through the holidays. Just maintain yourself, get that Uber, get that Lyft, designate somebody to be your driver.
Amen. Yeah, I'm going to echo that there as well. As a former bartender, I was always used to say, if you can afford to go out and get drunk, you can afford the Uber home. And I know Ubers have gotten more expensive with gas going up. I understand that. But at the same time, that's not an excuse for you to go out and be stupid. Most bars as well, if you go up and you talk to a bouncer, you talk to the bartender, they will make arrangements. If you feel you are worried your car is going to get towed for being overnight, most bars will make arrangements for your car not to be towed because you are doing the responsible thing. So don't let that be an excuse either. At the end of the day, your inconvenience over a night is not worth inconveniencing someone for the rest of theirs. So thank you all so much for listening to this edition of the NFL Weekly presented by the First Off the Bench Podcast Network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. It's time for y'all to go wash your hands and stop hating everybody. Have a great Thanksgiving. We'll see you in December. Take care.
Peace out.